The morning sun cast golden rays across London as Prince William adjusted his ceremonial uniform one final time. Catherine, radiant in her flowing gown, sat beside him in the ornate state carriage, her hand gently resting on his arm. The children had been awake since dawn, their excitement filling the palace corridors with laughter and nervous energy. George, now tall for his age, kept straightening his miniature military-style jacket, trying to mirror his father's composure. Charlotte smoothed her delicate dress repeatedly, her eyes wide with wonder at the magnitude of the day ahead. Little Louis bounced in his seat, pointing at every flag and decoration that lined their route to Westminster Abbey. The carriage wheels rolled steadily over ancient cobblestones, each turn bringing them closer to history in the making. William gazed out at the thousands of people lining the streets, their faces filled with anticipation and joy. Some had camped overnight just to catch a glimpse of the royal family. Children waved tiny flags while elderly spectators wiped tears from their eyes, remembering previous coronations they had witnessed decades ago. Catherine squeezed William's hand as they passed a group of veterans, saluting proudly. She whispered something in his ear that made him smile, momentarily easing the weight of responsibility that showed in his eyes. The children pressed their faces to the carriage windows, marveling at the sea of people stretching as far as they could see. Military bands played triumphant marches as the procession moved through the heart of London. The sound of trumpets echoed off historic buildings, creating a symphony that seemed to celebrate not just this moment, but centuries of tradition and continuity. Horse guards in their pristine uniforms rode alongside the carriage, their presence adding to the grandeur of the occasion. As they approached Westminster Abbey, the ancient bells began to ring, their deep tones reverberating through the city. William took a deep breath, knowing that in just hours his father would be crowned king, and their family's role in British history would be forever transformed. The children fell quiet, sensing the solemnity of the moment approaching. The carriage slowed as they neared the Abbey's entrance, where dignitaries from around the world waited to witness this once-in-a-lifetime event. Catherine adjusted Charlotte's small tiara one last time, while George practiced his formal bow. Louis, despite his young age, seemed to understand that something very important was about to happen. Photographers captured every moment as the golden carriage came to a graceful stop. The family exchanged glances, sharing a moment of unity before stepping into their roles on this historic day. William helped Catherine down from the carriage, her gown flowing elegantly as she took her first steps toward the Abbey doors. The crowd's cheers grew louder as each family member emerged, their faces glowing with a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation. This was more than just a royal ceremony. It was a family witnessing their patriarch's ultimate moment of service to the nation. The ancient stones of Westminster Abbey seemed to welcome them as they approached, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of millions who watched from around the world. Their journey to this moment had been filled with preparation, but nothing could truly prepare them for the emotional weight of what lay ahead inside those sacred walls. The massive oak doors of Westminster Abbey opened to reveal a breathtaking sight that took even William's breath away. 2,000 guests filled every pew, their faces turning toward the royal family as they made their entrance. The Abbey's soaring Gothic arches seemed to reach toward heaven itself, while centuries of history whispered from every stone and stained glass window. Catherine walked with perfect poise, her elegant gown trailing behind her as photographers captured every step. The children followed closely, their eyes wide with amazement at the grandeur surrounding them. Charlotte held her small bouquet tightly, remembering her mother's instructions about when to smile and when to look serious. George walked with the bearing of a future king, though his occasional glances at his younger siblings showed his protective nature. He had practiced this walk countless times, but the reality of the Abbey filled with world leaders and royalty made his heart race. Louis, despite his youth, maintained remarkable composure as he took in the magnificent ceremony unfolding around him. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood at the altar, his ceremonial robes catching the light streaming through ancient windows. The air filled with the sound of a choir whose voices seemed to lift the very souls of everyone present. William felt tears prick his eyes as he watched his father, King Charles, approach the coronation chair with dignity and grace. As the family took their designated seats, William noticed his father's slight nervousness, a humanizing moment that made this historic occasion feel deeply personal. Catherine reached over to straighten Louis's jacket, her maternal instincts never pausing even in such a formal setting. The children sat remarkably still, understanding the importance of their behavior on this globally watched event. The ceremony began with ancient words that had been spoken at coronations for over 1,000 years. Each prayer, each hymn, each ritual carried the weight of British history and tradition. William found himself thinking of his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and how proud she would have been to witness this moment. When the Archbishop lifted the St. Edward's crown, a hush fell over the entire Abbey. Even the youngest guests seemed to hold their breath as the golden crown, encrusted with precious gems, caught the light from the windows above. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the culmination of years of preparation and anticipation. Charlotte whispered something to her mother, who smiled softly and nodded. George sat up straighter, understanding that he was witnessing history that his own children would one day read about in books. Louis's eyes never left his grandfather, fascinated by the elaborate ceremony taking place before him. The music swelled as the crown was placed upon King Charles's head, officially beginning his reign. William felt a profound mix of emotions: pride in his father's achievement, sadness for his grandmother's absence, and awareness of his own future responsibilities. Catherine discreetly wiped a tear from her eye, moved by the solemnity and beauty of the moment. As King Charles was proclaimed, trumpets sounded from the Abbey towers, and bells began ringing across London. The children's faces lit up with wonder at the magnificent sounds echoing through the ancient building. This was their grandfather's moment, but it was also a moment that would define their own futures. The congregation rose as one, their voices joining in "God Save the King" for the first time with the new monarch. William's voice caught slightly as he sang, overwhelmed by the realization that his father was now truly king. The ceremony that had seemed like preparation for so long was now beautifully, powerfully real. As the newly crowned King Charles turned to face his family, William saw something in his father's eyes that he had never seen before, a mixture of overwhelming joy, profound responsibility, and deep love for those who had supported him throughout his journey to this moment. The formal ceremony suddenly became intensely personal as father and son shared a look that spoke volumes about their relationship and shared destiny. Catherine noticed William's emotional response and gently placed her hand on his arm, offering silent support as she had done countless times throughout their marriage. Her own eyes glistened with tears as she watched her father-in-law transformed from prince to king in front of the watching world. The weight of what this meant for her own family's future was not lost on her. George, Charlotte, and Louis sat, transfixed as their grandfather approached them in his coronation robes, the heavy crown now resting majestically on his head. For the children, this was both their beloved grandfather and now their king, a duality that would shape their understanding of family and duty for the rest of their lives. The newly crowned King Charles paused before his grandchildren, his face softening with grandfatherly love despite the formal setting. He placed a gentle hand on George's shoulder, a gesture that photographers captured but that meant so much more to the family than any public could understand. In that touch was a passing of legacy, a blessing, and a promise of guidance for the future. Charlotte looked up at her grandfather with wonder, seeing him in his golden robes and glittering crown, yet still recognizing the man who had taught her about gardening and read her bedtime stories. The contradiction was beautiful and confusing for a young mind trying to understand how someone could be both family and monarch simultaneously. Louis, despite his tender age, seemed to grasp the importance of the moment. He sat perfectly still, his usual energy contained by some innate understanding that this was a time for reverence and respect. His wide eyes took in every detail of his grandfather's transformation, storing memories that would last a lifetime. William found himself thinking of his mother, Princess Diana, and how she would have felt seeing her son and grandchildren at such a momentous occasion. The absence of loved ones often feels most acute during life's greatest celebrations, and he carried that bittersweet awareness even as joy filled his heart. The Archbishop's final prayers seemed to envelope the royal family in a cocoon of tradition and blessing. Catherine bowed her head respectfully, teaching her children through example how to honor both faith and family duty. The ancient words took on new meaning as they applied to this specific family at this particular moment in history. As the ceremony moved toward its conclusion, William realized that everything had changed in the space of a few hours. His father was now king, he was now heir to the throne in a more immediate way, and his children were now grandchildren to a reigning monarch. The shift in their family dynamics would ripple through every aspect of their lives going forward. The emotional weight of the moment was balanced by profound gratitude. William felt thankful for his family's health, for the peaceful transition of power, and for the opportunity to serve their nation together. Catherine shared similar feelings, knowing that their children were witnessing democracy and monarchy, working in harmony. When King Charles finally smiled at his family, the formal ceremony momentarily gave way to pure familial love. Despite the watching eyes of billions around the world, this was a grandfather sharing his greatest achievement, with the grandchildren he adored, and a father acknowledging the son who would one day follow in his footsteps. George stood with remarkable composure for someone his age, but his parents could see the mixture of excitement and nervousness in his eyes as he realized he was watching his grandfather become king. As the future heir, this ceremony held special significance for him that his younger siblings couldn't fully comprehend yet. Every ritual, every tradition, every moment was something he might one day experience himself. The young prince kept glancing between his grandfather and father, perhaps beginning to understand the invisible thread of succession that connected them all. When the heavy crown was placed on King Charles's head, George's expression grew serious, as if he suddenly grasped the weight of responsibility that came with royal duty. His small hand reached unconsciously for his father's, seeking comfort and connection. Charlotte was utterly mesmerized by the pageantry surrounding her. The flowing robes, glittering jewels, and soaring music created a fairy tale atmosphere that captured her young imagination completely. She whispered quiet questions to her mother throughout the ceremony, wanting to understand every detail of what she was witnessing. Her natural curiosity about the world around her made every moment a learning experience. When the choir sang, Charlotte's face lit up with pure joy. She had always loved music, and hearing hundreds of voices harmonizing in the ancient Abbey filled her with wonder. She swayed slightly to the rhythm, earning gentle smiles from nearby guests who were charmed by her natural response to the beautiful sounds surrounding them. Louis, despite being the youngest, showed remarkable patience throughout the lengthy ceremony. His usual boundless energy was contained by the solemnity of the occasion and his parents' careful preparation. He watched everything with wide eyes, taking in sights and sounds that would become treasured memories even if he couldn't fully understand their significance at such a young age. The youngest prince became particularly fascinated with the ceremonial objects. the gleaming swords, the ornate scepters, and especially the magnificent crown. His young mind tried to process how these beautiful things related to his grandfather and what it all meant for their family. Several times he pointed at different elements of the ceremony, earning patient explanations from his parents. When the moment came for King Charles to be officially proclaimed, all three children seemed to hold their breath. George straightened his shoulders, Charlotte clasped her small hands together, and Louis sat perfectly still, somehow sensing that this was the most important moment of an already extraordinary day. The gravity of the moment was not lost on them, even at their young ages. The children's behavior throughout the ceremony was a testament to their parents' careful preparation and their own natural understanding of appropriate conduct. They had practiced sitting still, listening quietly, and responding appropriately to different parts of the service. Their success in maintaining proper decorum while still showing genuine emotional responses impressed everyone who watched. As the ceremony progressed, the children began to understand that they were not just attending an event, but were actually part of history being made. George realized that this story would be told for generations, and he was living it rather than just reading about it. Charlotte began to grasp that her grandfather was now different somehow, more important in the eyes of the world, though still the same loving person to her. The moment when their grandfather smiled at them after being crowned was perhaps the most meaningful for the children. Despite all the ceremony and formality, he was still their grandfather who loved them unconditionally. That smile reassured them that even though he was now king, their relationship with him would remain special and close. Louis surprised everyone by spontaneously waving at his grandfather during a quiet moment in the ceremony. The innocent gesture broke through some of the formal atmosphere and reminded everyone that this was ultimately about family, love, and the continuation of relationships that transcended royal protocols and ancient traditions. As the Abbey doors opened to reveal the brilliant afternoon sunshine, the newly crowned King Charles emerged first, his golden robes flowing behind him as he acknowledged the thunderous cheers from the waiting crowds. The sound was overwhelming. Thousands of voices raised in celebration, church bells ringing across London, and the military bands playing triumphant marches that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. William and Catherine followed with their children, and the sight of the young family drew an even more emotional response from the crowds. People had waited hours just to catch a glimpse of them, and many were openly weeping with joy at seeing the continuation of the royal lineage represented in these three beautiful children who waved enthusiastically at everyone they could see. The return procession was more elaborate than their arrival, featuring the magnificent gold state coach that had carried monarchs for centuries. The children were fascinated by the ornate vehicle with its gilded decorations and crystal panels. George asked his father quietly about the coach's history, while Charlotte admired the intricate details of the craftsmanship that surrounded them. As they settled into the coach, the family could see the massive crowds stretching endlessly along their route back to Buckingham Palace. The sight was both humbling and inspiring. So many people had come to share in this historic moment, creating a living tapestry of celebration that painted London in red, white, and blue. Catherine pointed out various landmarks to the children as they passed, helping them understand the geography of their heritage and the significance of the route they were taking. Each building, each monument, each street held stories that connected to their family's history and their nation's past. This was more than just a ride through London. It was a journey through living history. The military escort surrounding their coach was magnificent. Horses stepping in perfect synchronization, their riders resplendent in ceremonial uniforms that had been carefully maintained for generations. The precision and pageantry created a moving work of art that celebrated both tradition and the promise of the future. Louis was particularly delighted by the horses, pressing his face to the coach window to get the best possible view of the magnificent animals. His excitement was infectious, causing his siblings to smile and point out different aspects of the procession that caught their attention. Even in this formal setting, they remained children at heart. The crowds grew larger and more enthusiastic as they approached Buckingham Palace. People were hanging from windows, standing on rooftops, and filling every available space along the route. Many held homemade signs welcoming the new king and celebrating the royal family. The genuine affection and respect shown by the public was deeply moving to witness. William and Catherine exchanged meaningful glances as they observed the outpouring of love and support surrounding them. This level of public celebration reinforced their understanding of their role in British society and their responsibility to serve with dignity and dedication. The children were learning through experience what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. Street vendors had set up commemorative stands, and enterprising citizens had created viewing parties that transformed ordinary neighborhoods into celebration centers. The entire city seemed to have embraced the coronation as a moment of national unity and pride. Even those who might typically be indifferent to royal events appeared caught up in the historic significance of the day. As the palace gates came into view, the family knew that their private celebration would soon begin, but first they would need to appear on the famous balcony to acknowledge the crowds that had gathered in the forecourt. The anticipation of that moment, when they would stand together as a family before the nation, added another layer of emotion to an already overwhelming day. The coach began to slow as they entered the palace grounds, but the sounds of celebration continued to echo around them, creating a soundtrack of joy that would forever be associated with this remarkable day in their family's history. The famous red carpet led them through the palace corridors toward the central balcony, where thousands of people had gathered in the forecourt below, their voices creating a constant hum of excitement and anticipation. Palace staff lined their route, many of whom had served the royal family for decades, and were visibly moved by witnessing this historic transition firsthand. As they approached the balcony doors, William felt his heart racing with anticipation. This was the moment that would be photographed, filmed, and remembered for generations to come. Catherine smoothed the children's formal wear one final time, ensuring they looked perfect for the cameras that would capture every detail of their appearance together as a family. The balcony doors opened, and the roar from the crowd below was absolutely deafening. Thousands of people packed every inch of the palace forecourt, their faces upturned with joy and excitement as they waited to see their new king and his family. The sight was breathtaking, a sea of people stretching as far as the eye could see, all united in celebration. King Charles stepped forward first, still wearing his coronation robes and crown, and the crowd's enthusiasm reached fever pitch. He raised his hand in acknowledgement, his face beaming with genuine happiness and gratitude for the support shown by his subjects. The weight of his new responsibilities was temporarily overshadowed by the overwhelming love demonstrated by the people below. William and Catherine emerged next with their children, and the crowd's reaction was immediate and heartwarming. Chants of support filled the air as people waved flags, threw confetti, and held up homemade signs celebrating the royal family. The children waved enthusiastically, their natural charm and innocence creating magical moments that photographers captured instantly. George stood tall beside his father, unconsciously mimicking William's posture and manner of acknowledging the crowd. The future heir seemed to understand instinctively that this was a moment requiring dignity combined with warmth. His waves were measured and respectful, showing maturity beyond his years as he began to grow into his future role. Charlotte was in her element, delighting in the attention and responding naturally to the crowd's energy. Her genuine smiles and enthusiastic waves created some of the most memorable photographs of the entire day. She pointed excitedly at different sections of the crowd, as if trying to acknowledge every single person who had come to celebrate with them. Louis, despite his young age, seemed to grasp the magnitude of the moment. He waved with both hands, his face glowing with excitement as he took in the incredible sight below. His uninhibited joy was infectious, causing smiles to spread throughout the crowd as people responded to his natural enthusiasm and charm. The family stood together for several minutes, allowing photographers and filmmakers to capture images that would become iconic representations of this historic day. The composition was perfect, the newly crowned king surrounded by the next generation of royals, all united in service to their nation and commonwealth. A Royal Air Force flyover had been planned to coincide with their balcony appearance, and the sight of military aircraft streaming overhead in perfect formation brought an additional element of majesty to the already spectacular scene. The children looked up in wonder as the planes passed directly above them, their engines creating a thunderous tribute to the new reign. As the ceremony concluded and the family began to wave their final acknowledgments to the crowd, William realized that this day had changed them all forever. They had participated in history, witnessed the peaceful transfer of power, and demonstrated the strength and continuity of the monarchy for future generations. The balcony moment lasted only minutes, but it encapsulated everything meaningful about the day: family unity, public service, national pride, and the timeless connection between the royal family and the people they serve. As they finally stepped back inside the palace, the sounds of continued celebration followed them, a reminder that this day would be remembered and celebrated for generations to come. The coronation was complete, but the memories created would last forever, binding this family together through shared experience of one of the most significant days in modern British history.